What do you see in that situation? Do you see Elias being dyslexic and JT just not understanding, or like what's your vantage point?
Well, no, I wouldn't say dyslexic. I saw one comment. They said he's soft. I don't know anybody who wants to become then screamed and yelled at every day.
Hmm.
I, I don't care. Now, let's just replay this if you're a boss, right? If you walked in, you called one of your employees in and, that's just bullshit. What do you do? Or, hey, listen, I know you're working hard, but can we try something? We need a little bit, how about this? Let's try this way next. If you take those approaches, but once you get, because that was me in self-esteem. Once I hit a certain point, I was as far down as, so I wouldn't say dyslexic, but the world's a different time now.
Yeah, well, I think that's one thing that has changed in the game, where it was one size fits all. Coach comes in, kicks a couple of water bottles around, throws some sticks, or you know what I mean, and then it's supposed to get the boys fired up, and he walks out there going, "I got him good." But now it's more on a peer-to-peer individual relationship where I got to talk to this guy a little bit differently than I talk to this guy, and the way I talk to the whole room.
Well, and that's when you get the most out of your players, is knowing your guys. All right, you walk in a dressing room, there's 23 different personalities, different humans, different stories, different paths, different guys, different religions, different races. So the better you know each one. I was a guy that if you got me fired, like Mark Crawford and I had some matches on the bench, right? He got me my wires crossed so mad that I played hockey and I didn't think hockey. It worked for me. Other guys, you had to go talk to them. And, you had some coaches that go to the media, right? And call them out in the media. Well, that might work for some guys. Maybe some guys it doesn't. So the better you know your players and how to handle your players is when you're going to get players to go through the wall for you as a coach.
Do you have a coach that comes to mind where you think that they knew you the best, they got the most out of you, and maybe one that just didn't quite understand and maybe didn't get the most value out of you?
To answer that properly, I didn't know what that meant for myself. If that makes sense. Again, I didn't know why I didn't nap till 2 years ago. So, obviously Mark Crawford and I had him the most, most games in the NHL, obviously in Vancouver and then in LA too. We had some great battles on the bench. He was a coach. I needed that right on the bench. I needed a guy, to come after, it was hard at me, but after that, I needed somebody who didn't, but I didn't know myself. So, to be fair to any coaches, you got to understand yourself to be fully committed. And actually, committed is not the right word, to be able to understand what you needed. And I think the players now probably have a better idea of what they need more than what we did back in the day. And we're head down, buried down, go for beers, have smokes, go to the game, play the game. Now they're doing yoga and playing video games and sharing their carrot sticks. Obviously drastically different than, the way the three of us got, growing up the game of hockey.
Well, I want to kind of shift this a little bit. You talked a little bit about coaching and the way it's shifted the way they deal with players. Does the media play a role in the psyche of a player? And because I haven't seen a whole lot of change in the way the media deals with players individually or as a team.
I think that falls on the team. Brian Burke, was my GM. Obviously, he was awesome, man. When I was first playing early in my career, coming down the trade deadline, my name's rumored. He called me. Hey, Soaps, your name's out there. I'm not going to trade you. I'm not, if something big comes across the where I can't turn it up, I will. Right. But, I'm not training. So that communication is important. The media's got to do a job. Right. I think it's the coaches and the inside that locker room and management need to handle themselves way they need to, so that that person understands that, right? So that guy understands that he has support in the back room. Obviously that Vancouver situation, there was none of that. The GM was calling out both those guys, and now one's gone. As soon as that happens, you can tell this. So the media's got a job to do. And that job's not going to change. I think, let's put it this way. There needs to be more understanding in the whole world than just, in the sports world.
Hey, if you enjoyed what you just saw, we do new clips every single day, twice a day on the Clips channel. You see clips right here. And beside Dave's crotch, we have a full-length show every single Sunday, right by my hand.
Click right here.